Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And very good morning to everyone. On behalf of AS Malaysia, I would like to welcome everyone to this webinar on introducing children to Ramadan. I would like also to take the opportunity to wish all the Muslims Ramadan Kareem dan selamat berpuasa. Today marks our 7th day of fasting, and inshallah we can complete the rest for this Ramadan. Ladies and gentlemen, we are indeed delighted to have Dr. Nurul Ain Norman, who is a fellow of AS Malaysia, who will be talking on this very important subject pertaining to Ramadan, how we deal with Ramadan with children. Ladies and gentlemen, fasting is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and it has been ordained as a religious duty for Muslims. However, educating and explaining this to children has always been a struggle for Muslim parents. Even though fasting is only obligatory after a child hits puberty, the Malay culture has somehow transformed it into an obligatory religious duty, citing the need for children to connect with the faith at early age. Some pediatricians, on the other hand, have also advised that fasting is not recommended for children in periods of rapid growth. The excessive practice of fasting among young children, especially in regions where the weather may reach 40 degrees Celsius, may lead to fluid deficiency and negatively impact their performance in schools. According to some statements taken from doctors, some young children complained of having severe headache and abdominal pains even after breaking their fast. While some countries in the West may regard the practice of fasting among children as illegal and dangerous, Malaysia, as an Islamic role model, should practice moderation in Islamic rituals, especially among young children. While there is no intention to refine or completely deny the core beliefs and practices of Islam, there is a need to clarify the importance of moderation to build a justly balanced society. This webinar is focused on offering appropriate advice on when to start preparing children for this ritual, as well as giving accurate information on how to develop their love for Islamic rituals and worship, especially during the holy month of Ramadan. This advice is an integral part of parenting in Muslim families to reach the goal of being the best nation with the most excellent virtues. Ramadan is not only a month of fasting, but also a time for inner reflection, generosity, sacrifice, self discipline, and self improvement, all of which must be incorporated in educating children about Ramadan. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Nurul Ain Norman to discuss on this topic, introducing children to Ramadan. Over to you, Dr. Ain.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, I would first and foremost, I would like to wish you all a blessing Ramadan, a month which is not just meant for thirst and hunger, but we should also use this month to increase our devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to strengthen our relationship with Him and to intensify our determination to overcome our weakness in obedience to Him, such that we become His devoted slaves, submitting to His very command no matter the difficulties we face. Brothers and sisters, when it comes to fasting, we always face this challenge and how we should introduce this hard task to our beloved children. And sometimes we burden ourselves with questions like, how can our children manage to face the difficulties of thirst and starvation for many, many hours? And will it give a negative impact in our children's development and performance in school? And do we have to wait for the children to reach puberty in order to introduce them to fasting in the month of Ramadan? So, the first point that I would like to point is to the age of puberty. And even many of you actually know about the age of puberty, but some still gets confused and with the ones that you have in your mind. So the first criteria there, it is the pubic hair growth, and the second is the age of approximately for boys between 12 lunar years. So don't get you know confused with lunar years and Gregorian years. So for the boys, it is between approximately 12 lunar years and 15 lunar years, and for the girls, approximately between 9 lunar years to 15 lunar years. And the girls must have the symptom of menstruation, and for the boys is the semen discharge. So when they reach the age of puberty according to the lunar year and not the Gregorian year, they will need to observe fasting and also perform their daily prayers. However, when these children begin their fasting at the first year of their puberty, especially the girls who may reach puberty in a very young age, for instance, 9 years old, and they try to fast and they face difficulties. I mean, extreme difficulties. For example, extreme dehydration, extreme weakness, and extreme dizziness. Then the child can break their fast only to the amount that is sufficient for her on that particular day, but then she will need to make it up as qada after Ramadan. However, it is just seen as difficult. However, if it is just seen as difficult, not extreme difficult, then we as parents should support our children with any possible way. For example, tell them to sleep and rest, or to keep a well disciplined eating program that is, nutritious, with nutritious meal during the iftar and suhoor. So the second point, brothers and sisters, is in regards to the pre-puberty children. Do they need not to observe fasting, and if they do, will they be rewarded for their deeds? So this is a common situation where we are seeing in some countries, and even in our country, Malaysia, where fasting turns into a compulsory act for pre-puberty children. So they're forced, and some are even willingly fasting for many hours, following the culture of the society. So we need to bear in mind that pre-puberty children are not obliged to observe fasting during the holy month of Ramadan. However, it is not restricted to encourage children before the age of puberty to observe fasting. Fasting, brothers and sisters, is not an easy task, and therefore, introducing children to this non-easy task needs to come along with a series of preparation that we may call as training. Just like some of us who had become trainees before we hit the real job. It is similar to fasting, where there is an involvement of training and encouragement, and there should be not be any enforcement or any sort of obligation. We may not tell them, to straight away take the full day session of fasting, but we tell them that they can start with a half day session, for example, or we can gradually tell them to fast once a week or twice a week or thrice a week, or we can twist the time of the suhoor, tell them to take their suhoor a little bit later than the hours we regularly take our suhoor. And it is important during this time that the parents observe and identify whether their children are in a position to observe fasting or not. They should know their children's strength and weakness and whether they are capable of fasting at an earlier age. During this time, you should tell the children that they should not at all skip their breakfast or suhoor because it is essential for them. And however, if you're concerned with your child's health condition or your child's capability of starting a fast at an earlier age, then you might consider to not fast at the age of 6. You may start at 7, 8, or 9. You know, you have to consider your child's capability in observing fast at an earlier age. So there is no obligation for when we should start fasting for the pre-puberty children. And as I said, encouragement for performing religious duties such as salah and fasting and even charity is very, very recommended. And this is for the purpose of planting the seeds of love and seeds of preparedness in the hearts of our children. And any sort of enforcement should not in any way be implemented. Children should be happy when they are ready to fully perform their Islamic duties. And this was stressed in many riwayas that this sense of happiness will lead to the willingness of the child to perform as much duties that Allah had commands and to have done them in a well disciplined manner. And inshallah, this will happen if we start a little bit earlier, as just I have mentioned before. Just like how we bring our kids to the masjid to gradually feel this closeness to Salah, it is similar for fasting, where we should tell them to start observe fast at an earlier age with conditions, which I have mentioned earlier. And so when children gets prepared for the war of nafs and desire in the month of Ramadan, it will be much easier for them to battle for the whole month when they reach the age of puberty. Speaking of the battle of desires, it reminds me a verse in the Quran mentioning about taqwa. Allah mentions in Surah Al-Baqarah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. Allah mentions that believers, fasting was prescribed upon you just like it was prescribed for the people before you, so that perhaps, or in order to allow you to attain taqwa. So this verse relates believers of Allah who have iman to Allah with fasting, and later with the ritual that has already been ordained to the ummah before us, which shows that this ritual is indeed close to Allah, and it brings our spiritual condition or to a better phase, and that if it comes from our faith and as an expression of faith and not for the sake, for example, for the sake of losing weight or saving money or even showing off, but for Allah, then some of us may and may not attain the position of taqwa. So tell your children that taqwa is attained not from the fear of the parents or the society or the culture or the teachers, but of Allah commands, of the Creator's commands, for not being punished, and for the love of Allah. So when you hold your desires, your bad desires, for the sake of Allah, then you will arrive to the phase of muttaqin, inshallah. Muttaqin is a higher phase than Muslimin and mu'minin, but lesser than muqarrabin. Brothers and sisters, training, mashallah, does not bear fruits in one single night or one single day, and not per week. It may take long as for years, depending on the capability of the child. Therefore, we as parents should be supportive as possible to make this successful. I also want to add to the point that children, pre-puberty children, will not be punished in the hereafter for the things that they are not yet prohibited to not accomplish. However, for every good deed, they will be rewarded by Allah and will have positive effects for their future life, inshallah. For example, the determination of risk and uh, a pious life in future, and etc. Referring to this very point, we must remember that worship in Islam involves both the body and the soul. And however, in regards to the development of the soul development is different with the physical development. So the development of the physical body actually follows the age of a person or vice versa. But the development of the soul is not aligned with the age of this world, time frame, or even vice versa. It is beyond what is in the limitation of this dunya. Therefore, a child has a capability to have a bigger soul than than the adults. And in the same condition, the adults also can have the capability to have smaller souls within their bodies in comparison with the children, depending on their deeds and action in this dunya. I will give an example, two examples. One in regards to Prophet Isa alayhi salam. So when his mother gave birth to him, Maryam alayhi salam gave birth to him, he had the mu'jiza to speak in defending the position of his mother. So the one speaking in behalf of this newborn baby is the body of Isa alayhi salam, or is it the soul of Isa alayhi salam? It is his soul that is speaking on behalf of his body. So the second example is in regards to the recitation of the Quran and how it can give a calmness to the hearts. This positive impact of Quran recitation does not just include the adults, but it also includes children and astonishingly the babies in the wombs of the mothers. Therefore, the soul in any phase of life has the capacity to grow outside of the age span of this life in the dunya. The last point in regards to the claim that fasting will have negative impacts on the development and school performance of the children. We all know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows us more than we know ourselves. He is the creator of the whole universe, and he knows our capabilities and he knows our weakness. Therefore, according to verse number 152, Surah number 6, لا يكلف نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah task not any soul beyond its scope. Again, I stress upon that fasting is not obligatory for children that had reached the age of puberty, and there are also exceptions for those who are sick and so on. And for pre-puberty children, there exists no obligation for them. However, there is also no restriction in doing so. Only and only it is done for the sake of encouragement and training. So parents are obliged to observe their children's physical and mental capacity and capability to observe fasting at an early age. It needs to be done gradually in order to not harm the needs of the body and also to let the body adapt to the hardships of this duty. Remember to tell them to break fast when harmful conditions appear. I will stop right here to give the opportunity for the Q&A sessions. May Allah make us people that can protect ourselves in and beyond Ramadan. And may Allah make this month of training easier for our children and something that lasts for us adults. And we're able to take the spirit of it and drive it in the rest of their children's and our lives as well. Barakallahu wa lakum wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Nurul Ain, for that presentation. And I think we can make a summary of what she has presented. I think it is, a consensus by the Muslim jurists that, children before the age of puberty are not obliged to perform or to observe fasting. And of course, the training is very important. And how do we train? And I can remember, if I can share with the audience out there and also with Dr. Ain, that I think I remember when I had this difficulty when I trained my two children when they were in school, when I was doing my PhD in London. So the regulations there is very strict that children at the age of, if I can say, before the age of puberty, uh, it's not they did not encourage, but they forbid the children to fast at all at school, and they have requested that all children's, regardless of whatever religions they are, to have their proper meal accordingly. So that would be one of the things that I don't think so that we have it in Malaysia, but I think what the practice in Malaysia, that we encourage our young children to observe fasting. And then I think there is a joke that dah buka puasa tengah hari ya, dah buka periuk. That's the joke that we normally. But we train our young children to wake up early, to observe fasting. Sorry, to observe this, to taking this sahur. And now I think with the time where sahur is very late, I think almost 6 o'clock, we can still have our sahur. I think our children can wake up early. The young children to also to I mean, share the sahur with us, and that is the beginning of the training until I think they can stand. I think for them to observe the fasting. So I think I would like to just share if there are questions for this. Topic of discussion. So let us check with the system whether we have questions so far. Okay. Let me begin with a question that maybe I can ask to Dr. Ain. Okay. In educating, or we say that we introduce this the fasting to the young children. How can you just sorry? What do you think that if we have teachers or parents that make it compulsory for these children, for these young children, to observe fasting, and to the extent that they will hit the children? Okay, I'm not very sure what is there any hadith pertaining to to these young children to observe the fasting. But for performing salat, we have a very clear hadith where we have to teach our young children to for them to perform salah, and until the age of 10, if they don't do, then we can have a little bit of what we call it, a bit of punishment for them to perform salah. But how do you think about this fasting? Do they do is there any other so is there any sources from the Quran or Sunnah pertaining to this educating or introducing this fasting to the young children? Dr. Ain, please.
Thank you, Dr. Azam. Yes, many of us really like punishing the children in order to perform any Islamic ritual beliefs, because they believe that is the easiest way and the most effective way um, to make children perform Islamic duties very well, and I do not support um, the idea that we should punish children to perform duties, because punishment will lead to unwillingness of the children to perform these kind of duties when they reach puberty. And this has connection with ikhlas, and the children will face difficulties in future when they further go into their own life. uh, in regards to ayah Quran, there is no ayah Quran mentioning about this. However, there are riwayas, many riwayas pertaining to this, that Children should be encouraged and not obliged to observe fast in an earlier age. So, this is the duty of the parents to observe whether a child can really take it, can really, I mean, have the ability and capability to observe fasting at a younger age. However, when it comes to when they hit, I mean, puberty, the children need to observe fast in the full month of Ramadan. And the exception, a little bit exception, during the early years of Ramadan, the early years of puberty, sorry, if the children, especially the 9-year-old girls, because they reach puberty in a very young age, they can break their fast, but just drink, just have something that is sufficient for only that particular day, but then they need to make it up after Ramadan. Mhm.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ain. Okay, it reminds me how this dealing with these young children, introducing them to fast, especially those who have to go to school, the afternoon school, and where the weather is a little bit hot compared to the morning sessions, and it will be something that give this I think a challenge for our young children to practice fasting at that age. We have one question here from Sayuti, and I think this is something which I think is very, I think, if I say, not challenging, but something like we encourage our young children to observe fasting. But not to punish them if they fail to do so. What is your opinion on the parents that give some sort of upah or rewards for each day they fast? So whether it is a good introduction to Ramadan for them. So let's say, okay, you fast. I know there are some parents they would put this, say, okay, Along, if you fast for one day, I will give you 10 ringgits. So it will encourage young children, despite they don't reach the age puberty, to fast because they want to have this at the end of the month. He or she get 300 ringgits. It's a lot of money. So perhaps that would encourage them of fasting. So despite they themselves maybe they cheat fasting. So sometimes they go to the bathroom, to the kitchen, and they drink some water because they say, I want to have that 300 ringgit for this Ramadan because my parents say if I can observe fasting, then I can get this upah or reward. Maybe you can answer that question, Dr. Nurain.
Yes. That is a very funny situation. I think we all do face this situation when we are all small. And yes, some sort of upa or rewards is permissible. uh, Other things related to encouragement is really very, very recommended in Islam, in any sort, in any way of encouragement, because sometimes children need rewards to do hard rituals, hard tasks in our daily lives. And if there would be no reward, they, would stand still, and there would be no motivation to perform these kind of very hard duties. Yes, I think that is the answer for this question.
Okay,
Mm,
so in that sense, that I think what
mhm.
what what I can say there is it okay for that practice to be keep that practice for these young children, despite they are not able to perform to observe the fasting, but because of that reward,
Yeah.
they,
Yeah.
so they make themselves until to the end of the day when they break the fast. I
Mhm.
think it's very tiring, especially during school days rather than during weekend.
Yes.
Uh,
Okay. The propose of starting fasting, starting the task of fast, uh, during the pre-puberty age is for the adaptation of the body
mm,
to this very hard task for the children. So, rewards is okay, but in regards to, if they are really, what do you call it, ikhlas or
mm,
mukhlis in doing this ibadah, this would be
mm,
linked to the children's that is, I mean,
mm.
that the ones that had reached puberty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Then I think maybe in
Mm-hmm.
Malaysia we are not quite. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if I say in comparison with some other countries where
Mm-hmm.
you observe fasting during summertime, and of
Yeah.
course the summertime during this summertime, I think it will be a very challenging for not only for children, for adult like us also, because you got to start fasting around 3 o'clock in the morning, and you break your fast about 9:30, or even to some places it around 10 p.m. So that would be a very quite challenging, not only for children, also for adult in terms of that. But inshallah, I think alhamdulillah, in Malaysia, I think we have a very good, tapi apa we call it, the period of fasting, in that sense that it's not too long and it's not too short. But I think the good thing, the good time for fasting is during winter time, where it is a very very short, because we have a very short day compared to night time. Okay, we have question by Abu Najla Faris Zainal. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My question, what would be the preferred approach in training children? Not only the fasting from eating and drinking. So we are talking about eating, drinking. How about fasting of all our senses? Teaching our children, fasting of the eyes, fasting of our ears, fasting of our tongue, etc., etc., from bad things. So maybe that would be something that I think, I mean, we would like to know. Okay, Dr. Ain, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Abu Najla Farizana, for the question. For this question, I would I would prefer that advice from the parents should be continuously given to the children during the Ramadan. After Salat, they have, usras and, discussion with the children. They have, the Taraweeh together. And then we have Quran reading sessions. And this may grow the soul of the children to a better phase, this which I have said that the development of the soul is different from the development of the body. And these food for the soul, Quranic reading, even listening, and these advices, meeting the ulamas, listening to um TV programs and watching these TV programs that has linked to Ramadan and Islamic values really, really give good inputs to the development of the soul of the children, inshallah.
Okay, thank you. I think that will be something. It's not only for the children. I think we also, I think when we fast, I think we have to observe this. So we have to fast from, I mean, make sure that our eyes, our ears, our tongues, all our senses are also fasting. And that is the most important part. And that will be the very challenging part. And I thought that will be in the teaching of Islam, where everything that if someone talk bad thing that said, Ana Soim, I'm fasting. So at least it can encourage or educate the other people to observe the month of Ramadan is the month of fasting, not only from not drinking or eating, but also we teach ourselves to be a very good person. I think the words in the verse that Dr. I mentioned, la'allakum tattaqun. I think this is very important. Taqwa is the main important, and to make sure that what is the difference of one person to another person of passing is the word of taqwa. Okay, we have one question, anonymous attendee in the Zoom. So perhaps I don't know whether he or she will say any advice in encouraging fasting for special needs children. for example, or autistic, and any development detail, delays of children. So how do we, educate this type of children?
Yes, these children are not obliged to first, they are considered as, like the pre-puberty children. They're not obliged to observe fasting. However, if you want to encourage them to observe fasting, you should always advise, talk to them slowly and make sure that they eat. I don't know if they understand, that fasting is obligatory for children that hit puberty. However, in these children, all we can do is, um, give advices and continuously, non give much support if they start to do fasting. And children, ADHD children, autistic children, does not like obligations and any sort of enforcement. So you should always be open if they want to, break their fast in the middle of the day and so on. But the most important thing is not, it's just not about fasting. Ramadan is about, the month of ibadah, and we should always, turn on the radio for them to listen the Quran and make the house alive with the recitation, and also lectures and advices from the parents too, inshallah. Mhm.
Okay, I think it will be a
Mhm.
very challenging for parents who have this kind of children, and I think the parents need to, attend some, I think classes or lessons, and we have this, I think these gifted children,
Mhm.
when how do we, educate them not only before they reach the age of puberty, perhaps after they reach the age of puberty also we will having difficulty in we call it, so how to encourage them of having this fasting, because they are not the ordinary children, and they have this some sort of, like we call it, gift by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that we can make sure that uh, not to to force them to fast because of their difficulties and also of their health background. Okay, we have one question from Iman Ramli. Many non-Muslim children in primary and secondary schools. We are talking about, mainly where we have a mixed Muslims and non-Muslims schools, face food problems during the fasting month due to the closure of schools canteen. And this is happening. This is also a problem for Muslim kids who are still young to fast. So it triggered concern even among Muslim parents. What is your view, the best practice by schools or parents to address the issue? Because they cannot eat in public, because their friend will say, oh, you tak puasa, awak tak puasa. So they try to observe fasting, but yet at the age of 7, for example, there is a tendency that they want to have some food during recess, and the canteen is closed. And how do you, observe this thing? How do you tackle this thing, Dr. Ain, please?
Okay, thank you, Miss or Mr. Iman Ramli. And okay, to address this issue, I think we should have a discussion with the what do you call it, the parent association society, and also with the teachers, where in every school they should provide a special room for this purpose, so that the children who are they are seen incapable to continue uh, in observing fast should go inside this room and have their meals. And because of that, the canteen, we can't do nothing about the canteen because the whole school is observing fast in Ramadan. So we as parents should provide food if we are aware and we are concerned about our children's incapability to continue the fast during the whole day. Yeah, I think that is one of the options that we can do, inshallah. Mhm.
Okay, we have one question from Nur Hasila Hassan. Okay, I think this is I mean her opinion, her view on this. Perhaps you may answer this. I mean, if you don't agree of this view. Okay, according to Nur Hasila Hassan, she thinks that what our parents here in our country taught us and trained us to fast in our early age, if even before our puberty, is a good preparation for us to fast in our age now. I was told that some of our Muslim brothers in other Muslim countries are having difficulties to fast in their adult age. Maybe they didn't being well trained to fast in their early age. Wallahu a'lam. Maybe what's your opinion on this? I think this is also a very tough question because on one hand you want to encourage our children to fast, and as we say, okay, I mean, take your time. I mean, whether you will have the ability to observe fasting and you can break the fast, don't worry. Despite your parents will say, tak puasa, but we have this problem as well for some Muslim countries, according to Hasidah Hassan, because of that upbringing. So when they reach the adult, they didn't fast because they were not trained enough for that. Perhaps Dr. Ain can answer this.
Fasting is actually for all is is a very hard task. In some countries they may fast until 20 to 22 hours, and this may be very hard. Not just for children but for adults too. And in some countries it may be very very hot, reaching to 40 Celsius degree. But then I would like to stress that Ramadan is not just about hunger and thirst. It is about our obedience to Allah and how to strengthen our relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In regards to this, the Muslim brothers who have difficulties in their adult age, yes, maybe one of the factor that leads to this is the unpreparedness of the body before they hit the age of puberty, or even they didn't even fast during the after they reach puberty. And as we know, fasting is a war of desires, and it will be hard for everybody. And when we hold ourselves from bad desires, our soul will develop into a higher phase near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we call it as self purification. And this has been ordained to the ummah before us, and even the other religions that find this task or this duty of fasting as something that is divine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think maybe if I may add to this particular questions, I think maybe in Malaysia, because with the timing for fasting, I think relatively about what 13, 14 hours, something like that. But I think in some Muslim countries where they observe fasting in the summertime, that will be a very challenging. And I think not only to educate the young children as well, the adult also will be facing a lot of challenging when we have to observe a fasting during summertime. And I think if the nature of the work that needs energy and strength. That will be the worst part as well. And I think that will be the discussion from the juries pertaining to the faker, how to observe fasting during this period of time, during the challenging time, where if you defeat the purpose of fasting, then at that particular time, I think the juries, according to some of them, allow this type of people to break their fast and to substitute at any other convenience time after the Ramadan, inshallah. I think that would be something, I think, a discussion in depth, perhaps, that we need to study more pertaining to the difficulties of some of the people there, especially when they fast during summertime. Okay. There is one question more. There's one more question from Mr. Iman Ramli. Okay. In 2015, a primary school in London banned its children from fasting during Ramadan, an undesirable action that one Muslim leader said could have spread the community bad press had the school simply spoken to parents. So not only we need to introduce Ramadan to our kids, but I also think we should also correctly introduce Ramadan to non-Muslim community. What is your opinion on this matter?
Yes, of course. A discussion is always good, you know, in times where we have different opinions, not just about Ramadan, and in every aspect, we should always have discussions to create this unity in diversity. And yes, we cannot oblige them to, follow our religion, but at least to have respect to our what is obliged in our religion. Yes, I agree with you that we should have more discussions on this because it's not just about the sacrifice of the body of having starvation and thirst throughout the day, but there are also restrictions. If kids get sick, you can just stop and break the fast and so on. So this discussion will be very fruitful for these kinds of what do you call it, disagreement between many parties. Thank you.
I think if I can add, I think during my experience when I have my two kids that at young age when they were at this primary school in London, I think they have this what we call it. They call it this at the corner of that every classroom. They have this somehow like now we are approaching the month of Ramadan, and I think all kids will be taught what is fasting means, the challenging of the fasting, and then if it is during winter time, it will be a little bit easier. Summertime will be more challenging, and I think the children are taught to make sure that all of them knows what is fasting, what is Ramadan like, and that will be something I think we need also to educate our people like what incident, I think unpleasant incident that took place couple of days ago, where they have this what we call it what we call it this video performing of uh, it is not about fasting, but it's towards what we call it Hari Raya, but it happened during fasting month, that is Ramadan, on encouraging Muslim to gamble online, and this is very discouraged. I think not respecting the month of Ramadan, and I think what is very important here is to teach our young children not only to observe fasting, that they don't eat, they don't drink, but they also have to observe how to keep their mouths, how to make sure that their ears and all the senses also have to fast. I think this is the most important thing of fasting in the lessons, where we not only encourage our young children to observe fasting from for the word of observing not to eat and drink, but also to make sure that we have to be a good person, not to talk bad thing, not to I mean, make sure that our tongue we keep it in the best place, So and that will be the nature of fasting in that sense. Okay, and I think if we before we end our presentation or our webinar today, perhaps Dr. Ain, you will have a last few words.
I would like to encourage the parents to give be a supportive parents, be the supportive parents in encouraging children to start what do you call it, fasting in an earlier age. However, uh, you should also what do you call it, you should also see and identify the weakness and the strength of your child, and see whether they can really go through the whole day without any food and drink. And it is actually our own responsibility to see whether our child is has the capability and to prepare the food, if in any case the child face any difficulties throughout the day.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nurain, for your presentation. Before I end, I would like to inform that IS Malaysia will be organizing another webinar this Thursday on the 22nd of April. It will be in Malay, Konsep Tauhid dan Ibadah Puasa, Para Nabi Sepanjang Zaman, where we will be having Professor Dr. Soleha Yaakob from International Islamic University will be sharing with us on this topic. On behalf of our Malaysia, we would like to thank again Dr. Nurul Ain, and also we would like to thank all viewers from FB Live, also from YouTube Live. I think please make sure that we not only fast in the acts that we don't drink and we don't eat during the daytime, but we also to observe the real fasting to make sure that our senses are also fasting. And the most important part or lesson of fasting is to make sure that we practice what we call it taqwa, and that is the most important element in fasting. Till then, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alaikum salam.